Jesse from JDI again, talking about superhero type training. Today we're talking about lean, agile, athletic, just like one of my favorite superheroes, Nightwing. Superhero training is about building a very broad base of physical attributes, but some superheroes specialize a little bit more in one or two couple things, just like Nightwing. So I wrote an entire article about this for Barbell a bit ago, where I outlined an entire hypothetical training routine. In typical me fashion, it was way too long, so we had to cut it down to actually make it work for that article. But today I'm going to go through exactly what I had put originally and explain why exactly I would have Nightwing train like this. Nightwing, or Dick Grayson, was the first Robin trained by Batman. He became Nightwing after he grew up and set off on his own. Nightwing fights the same brutally big and strong villains as Batman does, but he's not as big or strong or powerful as Batman. So he needs to rely on other things like his agility, his body control, and his speed to make up for that. So he actually was a trapeze artist with his family, right? Once they were killed and he set up to work with Batman, he used what he learned there and kind of built on those attributes. Nightwing, who's now an adult, has been training since he was a child, right? So he's had a tremendous amount of time to build up his general work capacity and strength, right? Something that he's done with Batman for a long time. He's not only been training with Batman for that entire time, he's been going out on patrol as a child, which is a little negligent, but that's okay, right? And building that work capacity the entire time, right? So when we're looking at what would he actually train, he would veer more towards focusing on what is he already great at and trying to maximize that as much as possible, right? So his work capacity is not something that he's going to think as much about it. He's not doing as much conditioning work. He doesn't have to worry about that. He can probably already run as long as he wants, and he can jump from rooftop to rooftop, okay? But when we're really trying to maximize, eke out the last bit of actual potential, human potential that he has, we would focus more on his speed, right? Making his already impressive speed even better, his acrobatic and gymnastics skill even better as well, and then his power in hand-to-hand combat, because he's fighting people hand-to-hand. Again, he's not as big, he's not as strong as Batman, right? So he has to be powerful, he has to be fast with his strikes and stuff as well, because again, he's not using weapons in the sense of guns or anything. He's beating the hell out of people with his bare hands and two sticks. Wardrobe and location change. So when we're looking at the actual outline of how he would train, right, okay, we're looking at someone who would train hypothetically like 3 times a day, right? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going, balls out every time. He has basically more strength and conditioning focused sessions in the afternoon and evening, but he might have a morning workout or a morning session to basically prime his body, right? When we're talking about somebody who gets beat up as much as he does, right, and who's had a ton of tremendous stress on his body, he needs to do small things throughout his day to keep up with his mobility, to keep up with his recovery, and so on and so forth, right? So his morning might look like something to really just work on body control and mobility, right? Doing something like handstand walks, crawling, flow movements, right? Hip and ankle mobility, and he spent about 10 to 15 minutes on that. Then after that, he would focus on breathing capacity training, right? Again, right? When we're talking about any type of superhero, we're talking about people that have to do tremendous feats, right? So they not only have to be very cardiovascular fit, but they also might have to, go into water and hold their breath for a very long time, right? So we want somebody who's conditioned to do all of those things, right? And really, when we're talking about superhero training, we're talking about not just being physically conditioned, but physiologically conditioned too, right? So meaning that we can control our breath, we can control our heart rate, and we can control how we react to certain heat and cold elements. So we work on some kind of breathing capacity training for 5 to 10 minutes or so, right? Whether that be something like a breath of fire or just work on the mechanics of breathing. Moving on with day 1 and really in the whole outline of the entire training structure, right? The brunt of his strength and conditioning work, his strength training, his power work is gonna be in the afternoon, okay? So to warm up with something like tempo pistol squats, ready to just get himself moving and stuff again, 2 to 3 sets of 5 reps, and then he would move into 6 sets of basically a modified French contrast method training. This is a very powerful method to increase power and speed and strength, where you would do a main barbell lift for heavy weight, rest a certain amount of time, and then do an explosive or dynamic or plyometric exercise and stuff after that. So for him, in his case, he might be doing like a barbell front squat or a back squat or even a safety squat bar squat for 1 to 3 reps at 80 to 90% of his 1 rep max. He'll rest about 15 seconds. He'll do some tuck jumps over hurdles, rest 15 seconds, and then do kettlebell squat jumps for 3 reps, rest 15 seconds, and then finish it up with alternating leg bounds. We're moving from a heavy compound lift to a resisted plyometric exercise to just like a straight up speed plyometric drill. So that would be his entire training for the afternoon. But again, right, it's not somebody who's worried about just one workout, okay? His training is for something else. His training is for him to go on patrol and fight crime and do other things, okay? He's not just focused on trying to maximize every training session, okay? He needs to do enough to maintain his levels of strength and power and conditioning, maybe improve them somewhat, okay? But he needs to manage his stress and manage his recovery so that he can do multiple sessions throughout the week, throughout the day, and still recover to go out at night. So wrapping up day 1 for his evening session, he'd be doing something like striking for 4 to 6 rounds, maybe on the bag, maybe someone holding pads, right, for 3-minute rounds. And this particular day would focus on technique and speed, not power endurance. Because again, he can't be going balls out every time, right? He needs to have different days structured to different focuses, okay? So day 1 would be a good chance to work on his technique and speed. So day 2, he might start in the morning with 20 to 40 minutes of tempo interval circuits. He would run for 45 seconds outside on a trail on changing terrain, okay? At a 75% effort or 75% of his max heart rate. He would rest 10 seconds after that, and then he would do some body weight exercise, right? Maybe a pseudo planche push-ups, L-sits, bear crunches, or tree branch pull-ups because he'd probably be outside, okay? Right? So that's something that he would do again for 45 seconds. So we alternate back and forth, right? Doing tempo interval circuits is a great way to build aerobic capacity without having to do steady state activity for 2 hours, okay, right? So again, right, he can spend 20 to 40 minutes, doing that trail run for 45 seconds, pause, do his push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups for 45 seconds and keep going back and forth from there. Moving on with day 2, in the late afternoon or evening, he would do double end bag work. He might do dead hangs during his rest time, okay? So he's using his rest time as another opportunity to work on his grip strength to maintain his body's isometric strength. From there, he would do ring muscle ups, 6 sets of 3 reps, 10 seconds rest between sets. And then he would move on to push up to squat for 3 reps, 10 seconds rest between each set, okay? At day 2, we're talking about not pushing the strength and power work too much, right? We started with a cardiovascular heavy session, and then we're moving on to something that's working a little more his lactic system, work on his combat skills, okay? But giving him a rest from that heavier strength and power work, okay? Late evening, he would do about 5 to 10 minutes, breath holds in ice water. Don't try this at home. He needs to be doing this type of physiological training to get himself prepared to do what he has to do, right? And this is the big difference with how I wrote this program with how I see a lot of other hypothetical superhero programs being written, okay? He's not a bodybuilder, he's not just a gym person, right? Just doing powerlifting exercises or even doing, functional training exercises without adding in skill work, without being smart about how you would layer combat skill work, how you layer in striking, grappling, practice, and how you layer in physiological work, right? Focusing on breath work, focusing on exposing yourself to extreme heat and cold. That to me is an incomplete workout, especially if you're talking about how would Nightwing really train in real life if he was a real person. Day 3 would be moving back more into skill power work, right? And getting a little more strength work in there again, right? So we have alternate days there, right? To allow himself adequate recovery and so that, again, he can go out and do what he has to do every night, okay? So starting in the morning, he might do 10 minutes of grappling drilling. This is grappling drilling. It's not necessarily live rolling, live sparring. And then he would do 10 minutes of explosive lower body gymnastics training. So again, right, trying to maximize what he's already good at, okay? So he would do stuff like back handsprings, front flips, back and side flips, okay? And then in the afternoon, he would warm up again, doing something like perhaps like a tib raise, because that helps with your jump ability, okay? And then he would do that same French contrast method. This time he'd do 4 sets, deadlift 1 to 3 reps at 80 to 90% of his one rep max, rest 15 seconds, do a heavy band resisted kettlebell swing for 6 reps, and repeat, okay? Then from there, he would do another 4 sets of a similar contrast method, okay? Where he would do heavy rotational kettlebell swings for 4 reps each side, rest 15 seconds, and do band resisted lateral hide-ins for 4 reps each side, okay? Again, using a resistance, dynamic explosive exercise, and then moving to more of just a truly plyometric, truly just jump exercise. Then in the evening, he'd round it out with doing 4 rounds of heavy sled pull or push, loading up as much weight as he possibly could for 10 seconds, so making that an absolute max effort. Then he would sprint for 45 seconds. Then he'd move on to explosive one-arm rotational landmine press for 6 reps each side, and then he'd sprint for 45 seconds again, right? So using a modified, again, French contrast method of going back and forth between a heavy resistance exercise to a pure speed, plyometric, explosive exercise. Round it out with 6 rounds of full sparring with a partner, striking and grappling, or heavy bag work, right? And that would be very dependent on, how much action he's basically seen that week, how beat up he was, if he actually needed more work, doing live sparring with a partner, and also if he had a partner available, right? So day 4 would be more gymnastics practice, but also focusing on a little more intense conditioning, okay? Because he does need that. So he would start out in the morning with 10 minutes of practice on the gymnastic high bar, doing stuff like skin the cat, pullovers, swings around the bar. Then he'd do 8 minutes, as many rounds as possible, with quality movements, with one-arm kettlebell cleans plus squat jerks for 6 reps. And he'd use as heavy weight as he possibly could, okay? And they superset that with heavy sandbag or heavy medicine ball or heavy rubber atlas stone cleans for 6 reps. After that, for the afternoon, he would do 5 minutes more practice of gymnastics on the high bar, or he would work on weapons training, right? Because he needs to be just as proficient with his weapons, with his screamer sticks and with his batarangs, throwing stars, whatever you want to call them, okay? As he is with just his bare hands. From there, he's going to do 5 rounds of bouldering, okay? And he would choose a new route each time. He would scale the wall as quickly as possible in 30 seconds. Then we'd hop down, rest for 30 seconds, and repeat, okay? So this is a very specific training method to build lactic conditioning, to build that short duration conditioning, okay? Because he needs to be able to climb well, right? Like he scales buildings, he climbs on things, he needs to be able to hang off of rooftops and all that, okay? Then after that, he would do 3 rounds. He'd try to get through this as fast as possible. He would do offset loaded heavy carry, so something like 2 case carry for 30 yards. And then he would move on to doing a rope sled pull, as heavy as possible, and pulling that towards him for 20 yards, and finish up there with clapping pull-ups for as many reps as possible in 20 seconds. Then in the evening, he would finish, again, he'd be focusing on that, medium to longer intense duration conditioning, okay? He would do something like 4 exercises. Each time he would do 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off, and he would go through this whole list 2 times, okay? So we do kettlebell squat swings, rotational med ball slams, sled drag sprints, and single arm kettlebell swing. End with doing some heavy rucking, running, or biking, and finish it with weapons sparring for 3 rounds. Because again, he does need to actually practice using his weapons training. So when you look at this on paper, or you hear me blurring out all this stuff, okay, it sounds like a lot. But if you really look through what's actually happening, okay, everything has to be intelligently laid out, and every workout itself, every single session really doesn't take that long, right? The idea is that he could do multiple sessions throughout his day, okay? if he keeps them short, if he keeps them about 30 minutes or less, right? And if he's going through all of these things with the appropriate times and being as conditioned as he is, he can get through all of those things as quickly as possible, right? So the idea is that if he gets through his workouts in 30 minutes, even if he does 3 30-minute workouts a day, okay? He gets through his workouts in 30 minutes, then he has all that time afterwards to recover, right? He can take a nap, he can eat. Obviously, he has to live a different life sometimes, okay? But he has enough time to immediately down-regulate, okay? And that's the whole point of training like this, right? Now, just like Batman, okay, he can't get too amped up for workouts. Really, he can't get amped up at all, okay? Again, this isn't his job. His job isn't to work out. His job is to beat the living hell out of people, okay? So he needs to be prepared for that. He needs to have energy for that every night, okay? So he has to treat his workouts like treating it like a job, okay, right? He just comes in, he does his business, and then he leaves, okay, right? Because this is a way that he can manage his stress, he can manage his cortisol levels, he can manage his dopamine, okay? He doesn't get too high with the highs so that he can immediately after that recover from those sessions. The other thing is that's important, right, is that he would need to alternate days, right? He'd have a bit of a heavier day and a bit of a lighter day, okay? A bit of a more explosive day, a bit of a more of a aerobic conditioning day, which helps him recover from that explosive power strength day, okay? As long as that is intelligently laid out, he can work through all these different systems, right? He can build the big, broad base of physical and physiological abilities that we talk about that's needed to train like a superhero. The last big principle that he has to abide by, right, is to make sure that he's only doing what's absolutely necessary, okay? The reason why someone like Nightwing might, in my opinion, use a lot of French contrast training, right, where we do a heavy lift and then we do an explosive thing after that, okay, is because number one, it is a very effective method to build strength, power, and speed, but it's also a way of combining stresses, similar types of stress, okay, combining them and also grouping them in a way where we're not making our workouts too long and we're not having to add an extra workout or an extra entire day of training, okay? It groups all those things together so that, again, we can recover from them. We can adapt to them and we can recover from them. So he has to remove all the other things that's not absolutely necessary, okay? Now, for him, a lot of things are necessary, right? He needs to work on his gymnastic skill. He needs to work on bouldering, rock climbing, okay? He needs to work his aerobic capacity, his lactic capacity, his max strength and all that, okay? For somebody like you who might be starting superhero training, you might not have as big of a broad base yet, okay? So you might not have to include as much in there, right? But again, this is somebody who's been training his entire life, okay? So getting through these workouts, although it seems like a lot, really is something that would be manageable to him as long as he removes everything that's not necessary. So if you want to see the full actual training program that I wrote for Breaking Muscle, I'll leave the link down below. And we have plenty of superhero and supervillain training at our website, jdibarbell.com. So if you like this, if you want to see more of this type of content, like, subscribe, and share, and do it right now.